Let's talk about taxes. I know, the word alone can be a little confusing. But what if I told you we could explain the whole thing with monkeys? Yeah, you heard me. Let's break down how it all works, starting right here in the jungle.
So, picture this. You've got this monkey, right? He works super hard all day long and gathers 100 really valuable leaves. But then the monkey government shows up and just takes 20 of them. I mean, that feels pretty unfair, doesn't it? So why do they do it? And where in the world do those 20 leaves actually go? Let's find out. All right, to really figure this out, we need to ask two big questions. Who's collecting the leaves and why? In this jungle, it all comes down to the powerful leaders portion, what we're calling the silverback's share.
Well, in our jungle, that job falls to a very important, very powerful figure, the Internal Revenue Silverback. Yeah, let's just call him the IRS for short. He's been tasked by the government with the super important job of making sure every single monkey contributes a little piece of their earnings for the good of the entire community.
Okay, so we know who takes the leaves. That's the IRS, the big silverback. But that just brings us right back to the million-leaf question. What are they for? Is he just hoarding them to build a giant personal leaf nest?
Nope, not even close. See, the leaves are all pooled together to pay for stuff that no single monkey could ever afford on their own, but that literally benefits everyone. We're talking about things like monkey hospitals for when you get sick, monkey schools to make sure the little ones are smart, stronger vine bridges so you don't fall into the scary river, and safer, well-lit paths through the jungle. The point is, your leaves build your world.
Okay, that all makes a lot of sense. But how does the silverback land on the number 20? Why not 15 or 25? It's not just some random number they pull out of a hat. There's actually a system for this, and it shows us exactly how your cut is calculated.
So, here's the real secret sauce. The government doesn't tax all 100 of those leaves at the same rate. They use this system called tax brackets. And what that means is that different chunks of your leaves get taxed at different percentages. The whole idea is that the monkeys who are better at collecting leaves and who get more use out of those safe paths and strong bridges should probably chip in a slightly higher percentage from their top earning.
Let's break it down. For our monkey's first 50 leaves, his first chunk of earnings, he's in a really low tax bracket. Let's say it's just 10%. So that's only 5 leaves. Easy. But for his next 50 leaves, he jumps into a higher bracket, say 30%. And the tax on that portion is 15 leaves. And then all you do is add the tax from each bracket together. You've got 5 leaves from that first bracket, plus 15 from the second one, and what do you get? A grand total of 20 leaves. See, it's all math, not magic.
Now hold on. Even after we've done all that math, 20 isn't always the final number. Believe it or not, there are perfectly legal, totally honest ways for our monkey to lower the number of leaves he has to give to the silverback.
And this is where something called deductions comes in. The whole idea is super simple. If our monkey had to spend some of his own leaves on tools just to do his job, well, it's not really fair to tax him on money he's already spent for work, right? So the government lets him subtract, or, deduct those costs.
So what kind of stuff are we talking about? Well, maybe he bought a much sturdier vine to travel around the jungle faster. That counts. Or maybe he invested in some sharper rocks to help him crack nuts, which is part of his job. That counts too. Even a bigger basket for carrying more leaves. Yep, that's a legitimate work expense he can deduct.
Of course, a system like this really only works if everyone's being honest. You can't just say you bought a new basket when you really spent the leaves on a massive banana feast with your friends. And that brings us to the final, really important piece of this whole puzzle, playing by the rules.
So, to make sure everyone is paying their fair share, the Internal Revenue Silverback will sometimes do what's called a tax audit. Now this sounds scary, but it's really just a formal way of saying he's going to double-check your math and your deductions. It's not about punishing people, it's about keeping the whole system fair for every single monkey.
Okay, let's recap. We've seen who collects the leaves, why they do it, and how they figure out the exact amount. Now, let's put it all together and see how those little individual leaves actually build a thriving jungle.
Just take a look at where those 20 leaves go. This chart gives us a pretty good idea. Maybe 40%, a big chunk, goes to running the monkey hospitals. Another 30% could be funding the schools. And the last 30%? That's for infrastructure. Keeping those bridges strong and those paths safe. You can literally see exactly how your contribution helps the community.
Think about it.
One monkey's contribution of 20 leaves might not seem like a lot, but when you combine it with the leaves from all the other monkeys, suddenly you have the power to build a better, a safer, and a smarter community for absolutely everyone.
And there you have it, the basics of how taxes work, all explained through the daily grind of a hard-working monkey. It really is a system that's designed for the good of the whole group. Which leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Now that you know why the leaves are collected, if you were in charge of the monkey government, what would you say is the absolute most important thing to build?